My name is Linda Tran. I'm 32 years old, an architect who learned to fall in love with lines that behave, budgets that balance, and buildings that stand because math doesn't lie in my family. That made me the responsible one, the saver with the sensible car, and the calendar that never forgets a deadline. And maybe that used to feel like praise, but the morning I learned I was banned from my sister's wedding, yes, banned, like a soap opera villain told to turn in her key card, it didn't sound like praise anymore. It sounded like a verdict. My mother, Susan, delivered it in a voice I'd heard at PTA meetings and dentist check-ins, politely official, low on oxygen, high on certainty, unless I apologized to my sister, Corinne, and agreed to pay $30,000 toward a presidential suite, honeymoon in Santorini, private butler, infinity pool, the whole travel influencer fantasy. I was not welcome at the ceremony. $30,000, the number ricocheted around my apartment like a marble in an empty bowl. Not 30, not 300, not even 1,000. An amount that could fund a home renovation or an emergency fund, a year of someone's retirement, contributions, a semester of grad school tuition if you're careful. But that wasn't the point. I realized as my mother repeated her line, SBs, appearances, do the right thing, guilt had converted into currency, and in that conversion, I was no longer a daughter or a sister. I was a due date. You might know the script. Maybe you're the dependable one to the person who shows up, logs, receipts, keeps track. Maybe your family decided your reliability meant you should underwrite other people's choices. If you've ever been treated like a walking ATM by people who share your last name, what happened next will make sense to you in a way that stings. Because this story, despite all the glitter and the floral arches and the carefully curated hashtags, is not about money. It's about respect and how quietly a family can teach you to trade yours away, one be reasonable at a time. I didn't start out angry. Honestly, I started out tired. Tired of being the person who keeps harmony by absorbing costs. Tired of pretending that fairness is a luxury no one can afford. My sister, Corinne the golden child, the Padney bubble with perfect lighting, has always floated through life like the universe owed her a concierge. She collects sparkly handbags, dramatic stories, and men who like to be seen. My mother adores her, and I don't blame her. Charisma hypnotizes. It makes the room feel warmer, but sometimes charisma hands the check to the quiet one. I am not the loud one. I am not the glittering one. I am the blueprint person. A woman who spent her 20s hunched over drawings while Corinne chased sunsets in Bali and posted perfect Aperol spritzes in Milan. I built a stable career, a neat apartment, a -1 figure savings that grew one responsible decision at a time. If there is anything I trust, it's a plan that holds. But no plan had prepared me for a brunch ambush at a trendy downtown bistro where the mimosas cost what my groceries didn't. Grad school, Corinne's engagement ring sent disco lights across the tablecloth as she pitched her experiences, not gifts registry. No boring presents, she sang, we want memories. My mother beamed like Corinne had just reinvented generosity. And then came the ask. Not a toaster, not help with a flight, the honeymoon suit, the upgrade presidential with a private infinity pool, $30,000. I laughed because the other option was crying. You know that laugh. The one your body does when the request is so deranged that your brain flickers. $30,000 is not a wedding gift. I said, it's a car, a down payment. A year of my IRA, Corinne called it an investment in her happiness. I fear, $500, cash more than most people give. Generous by any normal standard, the temperature dropped. Corinne's face tightened into something hard and glassy, jealous. She spat. Because that's the primer coat you slap on any woman who declines. An unreasonable demand. My mother's eyes narrowed like a storm forming over a flat field. I put money on the table for my untouched brunch, stood up, and left. Outside, the sun looked wrong, too bright, the way it looks when you step out of a movie into noon. That night, my phone lit up. My mother again, voice sugared and dangerous. U.S., you need to apologize. You need to give a proper amount. You are upsetting your sister. I asked what proper meant. She didn't say a number. She said peace. The call ended on a sentence sharpened like a paper guillotine. Unless you apologize and agree, you are uninvited. I stood in my quiet apartment with the phone still to my ear, listening to a dial tone that sounded like a fire alarm. And in slow motion, then the shock burned off in clarity. Arrived, cool and clean. This was never about love. It was about control. About how much I would pay to sit at a table with a price of bailout. Aiming rises with each course. Maybe this is the moment where some people cave. They call back. They explain. They bleed. Something in me refuse. Not because I am brave, but because I am done in or writing fantasies with money I earned while other people were doing sunset photos, done being told that the grown-up thing is to swallow the invoice with a smile. So I made a different plan. If no, nay had become the family's language for love, I would answer in symbols. Architects know this. When words fail, a line, a proportion, a single detail can say everything. I went to the bank. I withdrew $500 in crisp 10s50 notes. The teller looked at me like I was planning a cash art project. In a way, I was. Then I visited a tiny engraving shop downtown, the K. Ian that smells like warm metal and old polish. The owner, a man with gentle hands and eyebrows that said he'd seen every kind of family story, didn't ask questions when I requested a small gall. D-plated quiche with one number, 500. I wrote a note on thick cardstock and folded it until the paper felt deliberate. For the key to my wallet, the maximum capacity of my goodwill, the night before the week. Ding. My mother called again with the same ritual. Plea. Last chance. Linda, fix this. Apologize. Find a way. It looks terrible that you're not coming. People are asking questions. I let the seat. Lynn stretch until it hummed. I said I wouldn't apologize for my financial boundaries. I said I would attend the wedding and give my sister my gift. The relief in her exhale sounded like a woman who thought she'd won. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. I boxed the bills in stacked order, laid the key on top, tied a silk ribbon, and set the gift by the door. The next morning, I dressed like a thesis. Navy dress, clean lines, hair smooth, makeup understated. I looked like someone who could pay $30,000 without blinking and who chose not to. At the country club, all white columns and lawns manicured within an inch of their lives, I moved through the foyer like a witness. My mother intercepted me, pinning a smile over fury and telling me to look as sincere. I found Corinne in the bridal suite, eyes rimmed red, bridesmaids holding their breath the way people do when they're hoping for a scene and a save. I spoke clearly, just loud, enough for the room. I am truly sorry that my personal financial decisions have caused you and Mom disappointment. I wish you the tremendous happiness you deserve today. Then I placed a gift in her hands, silk ribbon cool against gold, and stepped back. It was not an apology for my boundary. It was a refusal to be priced, and it moved the story, finally, out of negotiations and into trust. Age. To sisters. To economies, that's what it always was. Even before the ring, and the flower arch, and the guest list filtered through a spreadsheet. If you drew our childhood as a floor plan, Corinne, S rooms would be bay windows and chandelier light. A staircase that sweeps. Mine would be load-bearing walls and quiet hallways that refused to collapse. She was the sparkler effect, all glitter and ends. Tant applause. The kind of girl who could stare down a bouncer and end up with a DJ's number. I was the kid who learned early that if you put your name on a chore chart, the trash H gets taken out whether anyone claps or not. Our mother rewarded brightness, good hair days, Big laughs. The ability to call something manifesting and make it sound like discipline. She didn't punish steadiness. She just overlooked it. The way you overlook a beam that never creaks. I'm not telling you this to demonize my sister. Karen didn't invent the economy. She benefited from it. A family economy is a natural thing, like a current you don't notice until you're caught in it. By high school, I had spreadsheets named things like car insurance, senior year, and books, AP exams, while Karen learned the devastating power of performing a problem sigh a certain way, tilt her head, make misfortune photogenic and watch doors open. In college, I started stacking campus jobs like Jenga blocks, learning how many hours you can work before the math breaks, while she studied abroad in Rome and tagged photos in front of fountains that didn't ask her to get wet. Difference alone isn't cruelty, but systems make habits, and habits make scripts, and one day you wake up and realize your lines are all about covering the bill. After grad school, while Corinne accumulated cities bow, Milan, Paris-like stamps, I accumulated licenses, deadlines, and savings. If I have a vice, it's the quiet high of paying a bill early and watching the numbers still add up. I learned to trust the moral geometry of things that stand because they were built to. Meanwhile, my social feed bloomed with Corinne's sunsets and someone else's boats. Our mother, Susan, sent them to me with caption hearts, as if a sister's phone needed PR. I didn't begrudge her the champagne light life. I begrudged the unspoken contract, that when the sparkle faded, the calm one would write a CK to turn the lights back on the day of the brunch. I knew it was an event the way you know a building wishes to be seen. Corinne doesn't deliver information, she stages it. The bistro was downtown, where even water gets a garnish and the bill arrives in a leather envelope like it has privacy rights. I wore the neutral armor of people who paid their own rent. Black jacket, good shoes, hair. That looks like a choice. When she walked in, the engagement rang through little galaxies across the table. She let the room notice her before letting us notice the ring, which is a small but usual difference. Presentation is a courtesy too. Experiences, not gifts, she said, breathless with the modernity of it. As if a blender were an act of oppression and a sunset vaccine. No boring presents, we want memories. Our mother beamed at the headline like a woman in a commercial turning toward the light. I sipped coffee and reminded myself there are people who love you in ways you don't recognize, and people who love themselves in ways you can't afford, and sometimes both are invited to the same table. Corinne leaned closer, perfume like a sponsored secret. And Linda, she said, sweet as a brand deal, since you're doing so well as an architect now, we thought you'd want to contribute something really meaningful. She didn't say because you're the reliable one, or because mom says you have the savings account of a sensible villain. She didn't have to. The table heard it. What did you have in mind? I asked. You learn to ask questions like you're adjusting a level patient, exact, willing to wait until the bubble centers. She flipped her phone around the way magicians flip cards, with a choreography that says the reveal is rehearsal. The honeymoon suite upgrade, she said, crisp as a new bill. Santorini, presidential suite, private infinity pool, a personal butler. The screen glowed with a number that didn't fit in my head at first because my head still believed we were talking about a gift. 30,000. It is astonishing, the silence your body makes when math turns into theater. The clatter of plates and the whisper of other conversations slowed into a soft hiss. My first laugh was small and involuntary, the kind your mouth makes when a stranger proposes. Marriage on a first date. Corinne, I said, calibrating tone like a beam under load. That's not a wedding gift. That's a down payment. That's a car. That's a year of retirement. It's an investment in my happiness, she interrupted, smiling, the smile of people who believe sums prove love when they're large enough. I could have said 100 things. I could have sighed, D, the market doesn't price sisterhood. I could have said memories don't depreciate less because they cost more. Instead, I made an offer that fit inside the parameters of a normal world. I'll give you 500. I said, cash, a rational number, a human number, a number that says I attend, I care, I participate without underwriting the set design. Her face changed. There, as a moment when a person who always expects yes hears no, and you can watch the brain try to follow the sound under misunderstanding. Then the filing fails, and something cold moves in. 500, she said softly, as if the number had insulted her. Dress, I'm your only sister. This is my wedding. You're tipping me like a waiter. I'm giving what I can give. I said evenly, letting the phrase sit on its own feet, not bending to explain that. Can men will, and will men won't be coerced. Just admit it, she said. And there it was, the primer coat they slap on any woman who declines an unreasonable demand. You're jealous. You've always been jealous that I'm beautiful and happy and marrying someone amazing. You can't stand it. You don't bring a spreadsheet to a delusion, and you don't argue gravity with a chandelier. My mother's eyes narrowed, clouds gathering over a flat field. The air at the table filled with the sound of unseen cameras, even if none were there. This is what families do. They don't need microphones. They have memory. I placed money for my untouched brunch on the table and stood up. There's a power in leaving without a speech. The way there's a power in a beam you never notice, because it never fails. Outside, the day was so bright it felt staged, as if the world had turned up the temperature on the light to see if I would squint. I didn't. I walked until the bistro noise turned into the regular city sound of people who don't know each other anything. That evening my mother called, sugar hardening into something she aged. ARP, your sister is distraught, she said. The words sister and distraught weighted like paperweights on one side of a scale she assumed I would balance with cash. You know how important this day is. You're upsetting her. You will call and apologize and agree to give a proper amount. What's a proper amount? I asked. She didn't say a number. She said peace. Peace is a beautiful word until it's a price tag. I hung up and sat in the quiet that comes before a new architecture. The old shape of a room you're about to change. The house of our family had always been built around Corinne's light. I don't begrudge a house its chandelier, but I know what holds the ceiling up. And when someone asks you to remove the beams and trust the yes, Parkle, you don't argue with them. You pick up your tools. You design an answer that will stand. The plan arrived like a drawing I had been drafting in my sleep all my life. Money had become the lingua J, so I would reply in symbol, 50 crisp $10. Bills neat, undeniable, human scale. A small gold-plated key, etched with a single number, 500, a note on heavy stock, deliberate folds that say this holds for the key to my wallet, the maximum capacity of my goodwill. I'd been the responsible one so long that they mistook restraint for endless supply. A key is a boundary in metal. What do you do when your family has priced your attendance? You reprice your presence. Not to cheapen it, but to make it unbuyable. The week after the brunch unspooled like a slow motion-y. Evacuation drill alarms not quite blaring. Exits everywhere. No one willing to leave the building first. On Monday, my inbox lit up with a note from the wedding planner. Hi Linda, we're finalizing seating charts and vendor headcounts. Please confirm your attendance status by EOD to avoid service disruptions. As if my boundary were a supply chain issue. On As day, my cousin Emily texted 3 sunshine emojis, followed by, hey, are you coming to Corinne's big day? Heard there was a little mix-up. LOL, the LOL did a lol. T of work equal parts smoke screen and invitation to gossip. By Wednesday, Aunt Jennifer called to deliver her soft voice diplomacy. Honey, your mother is worried sick. It's one day, don't be so absolute. Remember, love is flexible. I thanked her and did not argue that Flexibility without integrity feels less like love and more like acrobatics for applause. Each message came sugared, packaged in the language of harmony, but the subtext never changed. Pay the toll. Resume your role. Sociologists have a term for this, though they dress it in fewer sighs. Role enforcement. Families run on it. A consistent self becomes a service they expect on demand. The responsible one will swallow the bill because she always has. When she doesn't, they don't recalculate. They escalate. Late Wednesday night, my mother called with the polished finality of someone who had practiced her lines in the mirror. Linda, she said, you're upsetting your sister. You know how important optics are. Ray, if you won't apologize and contribute a proper amount, you're not welcome to attend. The words floated, tidy as stationery, proper amount, welcome, attend. All these bureaucratic verbs pretending to be care. I asked what proper meant. She didn't say a number. She said, peace, as if peace were a currency she could escrow if I just signed the wire. After we hung up, my apartment felt to clean, like a hotel room waiting for someone else's luggage. I lay awake and watched the dark arrange itself into lines and planes on my ceiling. Architects like to pretend we only design objects, but the secret is we design feelings. Relief when a hallway widens, safety when a railing meets your palm, focus when a window frames the horizon just so, somewhere between 2 and 3. In the morning, the feeling I needed arrived. Clarity. I had been priced out of my family's version of belonging not because I lacked love, but because I refused the invoice. If love depth ends on payment, that isn't a bond, it's a subscription. Subscriptions are easy to cancel when the terms become insulting. On Thursday, I turned clarity into a plan. Not a speech, not a counter-ultimatum. A design. The first material was cash not because cash is crude, but because it is literal. Money speaks the family's language without translation. I walked into my bank and asked the teller for $500 in 10s, 50 notes, crisp. The young man behind the glass counted out the stack with a performative precision I appreciated. Fan, tap, square, band, then slid it till. Armed me with an arched eyebrow that asked a polite question. His training for bad project, he said anyway, almost whispering. More like a diagram, I answered. He smiled like people do when they recognize a metaphor they wish they could keep. There are moments in cities that feel like pocket theaters. The engraving shop was one of them. Brass plates on the wall, glass cases with method, ales the size of coasters, the air perfumed with metal and felt. Joseph, the owner, had the gentle competence of men who fix small, crucial things. He looked up from a loo and took in my face a W. A good listeners take a measure without making it up. Judgment. What can I do for you? A key, I said, gold-plated. Small, decorative. I like a number engraved. 500 on the bow. He set the loop aside. Housewarming, anniversary. His voice made both sound like acts of repair. Boundary, I said. He nodded as if that were a category he stalked behind the counter. What number? 500. He didn't raise an eyebrow, and his kindness in not doing it was its own engraving. Give me an hour. While he worked, I wrote the note. I bought the thickest cardstock I could find. Next door, the kind that resists your fingers, so you have to mean it. Words matter, but material tells on you. I printed my script in a neat, unhurried hand for the key to my wallet. The maximum capacity. F my goodwill. I looked at the sentence until it stopped sounding clever and started sounding accurate. Accuracy is a kindness. It prevents future confusion. I thought about the lore of keys in architecture. A key can be a keystone, the wedge that locks an arch and lets it bear weight. In life, a key is permission. It tells you what belongs to you and what does not. We say give me a key, when what we mean is give me access. We say I lost the key, when what we mean is I can't open this without damage. Engraving 500 onto a gold key felt like the smallest strut. You're that could hold my refusal without collapsing into spite. Symbols are bridges. When conversations drown. Perfect, Joseph said when he returned. He wasn't complimenting his work so much as naming the feeling of something exactly sized to the hole it will fill. The bow gleamed softly, the number cut clean and shallow present but not screaming. I paid and left with a velvet pouch that made the kilo. Okay, like a jewel. It wasn't. It was a lock disguised as an invitation back home. I staged the gift with the care of someone who has watched too many spaces tell the wrong story. I stacked the tens in two. A precise brick squared the corners. Slipped a band around the center. I set the key on top, like a punctuation mark that refuses melodrama. Then I chose a box that had weight and lined it with white tissue. The tissue crinkled like brittle snow, satisfying and faintly ceremonial. I tied a silk ribbon that fell just right. The package looked like money and restraint and a thesis, defending both. By then, messages had shifted from persuasion to maintenance. Cousin Emily texted any update. Just trying to plan outfits. As if my attendance affected her shoes. Anjan. Knifer left a voicemail softening her rhetoric into the universal solvent of guilt. You don't want regrets when you're older. Honey, the planner emailed again. Kind reminder. Our vendor cutoff is noon Friday. My mother sent a single line Friday morning. That managed to be both plaintive and scolding. Please, for appearances. It always comes back to appearances when actual care would cost. The sender too much truth. That afternoon, I bought a navy dress that fit like a sentence with no extra words. I booked a blowout with a stylist who understood architect the W. Some stylists understand debutante. Clean, quiet, something you notice only if you were trained to notice it. If I was going to be accused of cruelty for insisting on a limit, I could at least look like a woman who chooses rather than a woman who can't. Optics, as my mother had said, matter but not the way she meant. Night fell like a curtain. My phone rang at 9 with my other's final performance. This is your last chance, she said. Voice lacquered to a gloss. Apologize to your sister. Tell her you'll give the money or you'll find a way. Come tomorrow and beha. That people are asking questions. I won't apologize for my financial boundaries, I said, but I will come and I will give Karen my gift. She exhaled relief so loud it made me picture her shoulders dropping. Thank God. Linda, I knew you'd do the right thing. She meant the expected thing. I let her have the illusion for one merciful night. Mercy is not surrender. Sometimes it is amply the decision to let a curtain stay closed until morning. I set the box by my front door. I sat on the floor in my hallway and leaned against the wall, letting the paint press a pale rectangle onto the back of my dress. It felt like leaning on something that would not abandon its function. I thought of all the beams people never see because the beams never fail. I decided I would be a visible beam. Just this once, let them look. Let them call it dramatic if they must. Drama is only clarity when the lights have been too dim for too long. I slept. Not perfectly, not heavily, but enough to wake knowing what I would not do the next day. I would not explain. I would not escalate. I would not let anyone barter my presence like a line item on a vendor sheet. I would bring my gift, and I would deliver my sentence, and I would let the symbol do what symbols do when they are well made, carry the weight so the person doesn't have to. Morning arrived with the composure of a contract signed in blue ink, no drama in the sky, no woman in the air, just a day that intended to proceed whether I cooperated or not. I showered, dressed, and built an exterior that matched the interior line I refused to cross. The navy dress fit like a sentence pared down to subject and verb. The shoes were quiet and certain. I pinned my hair back in a way that didn't ask for permission, and my makeup lived in the narrow band between presentable and declarative. If optics were the family's liturgy, I would speak it fluently while telling a different faith underneath. The box as a Tea on my entry table like a thesis with a hard cover. Silk ribbon flat. Corners true. Weight honest. I lifted it, felt the compact gravity of bills and metal, and placed it into a structured tote, whose leather had learned to keep its shape. Keys, phone, card case, breath. I locked my door behind me with a click that sounded exactly like intention. The country club had the same personality it always had: white columns that wanted to be photographed, lawns trimmed as if each blade had been argued down to a perfect length, staff gliding in those invisible orbits that signal money prefers not to notice the labor that births its beauty. A valet opened my door with a flourish designed to erase the human behind the gesture. I thanked him with the kind of eye contact that interrupts that erasure for half a second. Inside, the floor smelled of flowers whose names are used like status passwords: gardenia, peony, something imported with an accent in its price tag. I arrived 15 minutes before the ceremony, exactly in the window where being seen looks accidental and arriving late reads as confidence, not disrespect. The glass doors whispered shut behind me. The light fell through them in long, rectangular panes, the architecture's way of saying we cured even the sun. I could feel my mother before I saw her, the stoddy sea charge of a woman trying to steer events with her will. She materialized beside me with the smile you put on for a camera you cannot locate. You need to apologize to your sister right now, she said through that smile, her fingers rising toward my collar, in a tiny gesture that belonged to childhood. I took a half step back, enough to avoid the touch without making a spectacle of the refusal. I will speak to her, I said, and let the hallway carry the words forward without hurry. The bridal suite lived at the end of a corridor lined with framed oil paintings that pretended to be ancestral. Music bled through the carpet violin rehearsals. Muffled laughter, the shove a garment bag being peeled open somewhere. I knocked once and entered when a bridesmaid chirped, "Come." The room held its breath the way rooms do when a storm is rumored, and the sky looks to calm. Corinne stood at a mirror, a rectangle of reflected light framing her like a portrait that paid to be flattered. Her eyes were rimmed in that damp pink that can be joy or rage depending on the angle. Around her, satin and chiffon, champagne and flutes that had learned to be held at the stem, a ring light. Abandoned in a corner like evidence, conversation didn't stop so much as lose track of its words. A maid of honor adjusted a strap that had nothing wrong with it. Someone laughed a half laugh and swallow. At the second half, I caught my own reflection behind. Corinne's shoulder navy, neat, unspectacular, and understood that I had dressed to remind myself I was not the antagonist in a story. What hour? Ere the heroine wears white. Linda, Corinne said, flat and sharp as a paper cut. Corinne, I answered. My voice belonged to a person who had slept enough to be sure. I stepped close, enough to enter her circle without touching the mirror of her. Morning. I am truly sorry that my personal financial decisions have caused you and Mom disappointment. I said, each word articulated lit. It had been placed exactly where Lode asked for it. I hope the tremendous happiness you clearly deserve surrounds you today. It was an apology for grief that belonged to other choices, not mine. I aimed the volume so that every bridesmaid could hear, but none could accuse me of performing. The sentence landed and lay there, a clean line on polished floor. Corinne's mouth performed a thank you, and then refused to sign it. Well, she said, and the word held so many rehearsals inside it I almost admired the production budget. Thank you for coming. Her eyes flicked a my too. Tay like a person smelling rain. Did you? I set the box on, the vanity between her perfume and a tray of hairpins. The silk ribbon gathered the light in an obedient bow. I did not linger on it with my goss. Gifts should not be auditioned by their givers. My gift to you, I said, the 4 words a period, not an invitation. I'll open it later, she said quickly, as if refusing a trap that had not been set. We're in a rush. Of course, I said. Enjoy your day. This is the part in some families where a reconciliation scene would bloom tears, clasped hands. I whispered, "You know I love you." I did not deny her that out of cruelty. I denied it because reconciliation without repair is another invoice hiding in lace. I stepped back. The bridesmaids resumed their small bustling acts. Lipstick caps clicked home. The gown's train was lifted and lowered like a breath. Two women murmured the weather as if remarking on the sky could stitch the ground. In the corridor, my mother waited with that bright animal hope of someone who believes she can still salvage the headline. "Well," she said, so quickly that the word tripped over its own expectation. "I wish her happiness," I said, and I gave her my gift. Relief flared across her face so nakedly that I felt absurdly tender toward the version of her who had never had to distinguish between peace and quiet. "Good," she exhaled. "Good. You've done the right thing." There is a kindness in not telling someone the truth they have no tools to use safely. I let the moment stand. The ceremony had gathered itself outside vows under an arch that cost more than my monthly mortgage, chairs aligned with military precision, florals erected like temporary cathedrals to a god of curated taste. I took a seat in the back row, the place from which exits are clean. The string quartet played the kind of music that feels like money learning to whisper. People turn their heads because turning heads is part of the choreography. When Corinne walked down the aisle, she was beautiful in the way archetypes are beautiful: light on lace, air on skin, promise on display. I watched her reach the man she believed Ed would keep the sky the same color. They said the words. You say they put rings on the fingers that tell the world what the world expects to hear. The officiant told a story about first meetings and inevitability. The audience did the communal improv we call blessing. I did not object or analyze or do anything that would let anyone call me the villain later. I attended the way I said I would, on my terms. Photos follow like a parade designed to be captured, not lived. I stood where the corners of frames taught me to stand for a few combinations: family here, cousins there long in. Oh, to be recorded into archives I did not intend to reread. When the cocktail hour began with its trays of things that crunched delicately and taste expensive, I checked my watch, located the nearest exit, and let my feet carry me past a bar that could furnish a small apartment if you sold it piece by piece. Outside, the light had shifted from ceremony to afternoon. The breeze did that small sweater tug at your skin. I walked to my car without looking back. Not out of defiance, but because I had no more business inside the machine I had just refused to operate. I was home by the time the first toasts were probably being drafted aloud by people who had practiced them on commutes. Shoes off, dress hung with respect. I poured a glass of wine that tasted like exactly what it cost and no more. The apartment welcomed me with its honest lines. My phone lit up before I finished the first sip. "Dad," the screen said, and then his voice traveled warm, a little tired. Thea did with something that sounded like barely suppressed laughter. "She found it," he said without hello. "Found what?" I asked, because families have rituals, and one of ours is letting the other person tell it. "The key," he said, "and your stack of tens." For a second I watched the room expand and contract the way rooms do when news decides to sit down. And he chuckled, a low sound of strained amusement wrapped around genuine respect. "She showed it to your mother first." I think I heard an actual gasp. Corinne started ranting about what did she call it, her $10 bills. Then Patricia, you remember Patricia from college, asked what the key meant, and I said again, not to hurry him, but to let the story find its shape. "She read your note out he said, and then he paused as if giving me the silence to paint the scene. "For the key to my wallet, the maximum capacity of my goodwill." He let the sentence hang, the way a good beam spans a room. The room went very quiet. Then everybody understood. I pictured the cocktail hour turning into a seminar on consent. The clink of glassware practicing silence. The photographer shutter interrupting with clicks like punctuation. I pictured Corinne's face trying to fit fury into dignity, and failing because dignity doesn't like to be rented by the hour. I pictured my mother, who has always mistaken quiet for agreement, learning the difference between the two. "You did it clean, kiddo," my father said, and the word clean landed in me like an architectural compliment. "Brute. All but clean. I'll take clean," I said. "Brutal is their adjective." He laughed softly. "Fair enough." After we hung up, I stood at my window and watched the city do what cities do at dusk. Turn work into light. Somewhere across town, a gift box sat open on a linen-draped table, a key catching ambient gold, a stack of tins arranged like a brick that wouldn't build the structure she wanted. Symbols age. Old without my body having to. That is their mercy. I finished my wine and let the quiet of a room without invoices fill my chest. For the first time in weeks, my breathing sounded like mine. If you've ever watched a room learn a lesson, you know it doesn't happen all at once. It moves like light under a door, first a line, then a widening, then suddenly everyone is seeing, ending in it pretending they always saw. Dad called it clean. And maybe that's the word that makes what unfolded during cocktail hour feel almost surgical. The room didn't explode. It inhaled, quietly, and held the breath. After we hung up, he texted me. Details the way men who don't love talking still love accuracy. She opened box near terrace. He wrote, "Showed your mother. Your mother's face equals like she bit a lemon she'd paid too much for." A minute later, another waiter holding tray of blini froze midair. Then Patricia asked about Key. I could S.E. Yet the terrace door is open to manicured hedges, a string quartet moving into a song that believes in tasteful love, clusters of guests holding glasses by the stem as if balance were a virtue you could wear. Karen, lit by TH. A kind of sunlight that flatters even unflattering. Choices unties the silk, peels back tissue, and finds what she didn't expect. A stack of tins that refuse to pretend they are something else, and a small gold-plated keep breathing a number that won't get louder no matter how hard you stare at it. I imagine she tried to control the narrative first, as people do when the story starts. Disobeying. It's cash, she might have said. And because the word cash arrives with its own dumb gravity, a few heads would have tilted. Performing interest. $10 bills. She would add, letting the denomination do the insult work so she didn't have to. Someone near the bar would murmur something about classy that sounded like a compliment, but was not in song. Eon else would be refreshing the group chat thread labeled bridal. Squad to type 3 words. She brought cash. And then Patricia Steady, collegiate Patricia, who never mistook a chandelier. For a ceiling asks the question a symbol always wants. What does the key mean? There's a pause inside a pause. The way the hinge of a door contains both metal and the decision to walk through it. Karen reads the note out loud. For the key to my wallet, the maximum capacity of my goodwill. The sentence vibrates in the air with the accuracy of a ruler laid on a blueprint. Conversation falls through its own holes. The photographer, who is paid to arrest time into curated slices, lowers her camera fraction, sensing something unphotographable. To bridesmaids glance at one another, then away, the choreography of people who just realize the mirror is not flattering. Room tone is a thing in film and in life. It's the sound that isn't sound. The bed the noises sleep on. Dad said the art. Room tone changed. People stopped performing and started thinking. You could feel the math as they recalculated which story they'd be attaching themselves to. It was like the air had to agree first. He texted, then the faces followed. He told me Susan the mother, who insists peace is a price tag stammered. The word inappropriate got pulled out of its velvet bag, along with tacky, which is a knife disguised as etiquette. But you can't argue a symbol without providing your own, and she had none ready except the tired idea that appearances cannot bear honesty. Appearances, however, have always been less fragile than the truth we refuse to carry. Someone may be a cousin, maybe a co-worker of Michael's with a moral compass unbent by family discounts set quietly, she feared. D500. Someone else asked. You asked for 30,000. Numbers are rude when they line up like that. They get between people and their excuses. Corinne tried to build a defense out of romance war. DS. Honeymoon, once in a lifetime, memories. But a defense built out of lace won't hold against the beam of a limit spoken out loud. And the staff, God bless the people who build. The invisible scaffolding of our events did their subtle, heroic work. A bartender paused the pour long enough to register the temperature of the air, then resumed. A vote for continuing rather than escalating. A server adjusted the angle of a tray, an act that looked like nothing. But that said, we are steady even when you are not. The string quartet slipped into a piece that sounded like a imposure under pressure. Rituals need continuity too. Survive embarrassment, and they gave it. Later, Dad told me that, for 3 full minutes, nobody tried to joke the moment away. No one said, "Oh, Linda, what a kidder," or "It's the thought." That silence, that was a respect I hadn't been able to buy with years of doing the right thing. It came free when I refused to pay. Then the conversations resumed, smaller and sharper. People divided into those who considered the lesson and those who decided against it. One of Michael's uncles shrugged and said, "Boundaries," in the tone of a man who has learned that word slowly. A bridesmaid whispered to another, "Honestly, I wish I had a key last year." Someone by the shrimp tower said, It's not about the money," and for once in that sentence's career, it wasn't a lie. My phone buzzed again. Your mother tried calling you 15 times. As it turned out, I let them ring into the soft dark of am arranged by a person who does not want to be found unless she chooses it. At 2 a.m., Corinne's text came through, thorns visible even in a font designed to neutralize emotion. "You humiliated me at my wedding. I will never forgive you." I typed, "What truth allows?" I gave exactly what I offered. You chose to make it about more. Send. Delivered. Read. 3 little dots that didn't become a reply. If weddings are public rituals about private promises, then this cocktail hour became a public ritual about private economics. We pretend weddings are only about love, but they are also about the stories families tell themselves about worth, who gives, who receives, who keeps the books no one writes down. In that light, my gift was not a provocation, it was a translation. It took the family's language, money, and the family's myth sisterhood, and bound them together in a shape that could be understood at 30 paces. Here is a limit. It is engraved. It opens nothing except a new way of speaking to me. I am not naive. I am of some people left. The country club shaking their heads, tutting about making a scene, as if insisting on your own terms is louder than demanding $1. 30,000 suite with a butler. Scenes are not measured by decibels. They are measured by how far a light is from home before someone calls it back. My mother will tell this story with a different soundtrack for it. Well, she will trade boundary for betrayal, because that sells easier in the markets where she shops for sympathy. But narratives that contradict physics don't last. Gravity always insists. Nay exerts a gravity families love to ignore until the floor tilts and thin flutes start sliding off the table. I didn't go to sleep giddy or vindicated. I went to sleep in a room that felt correctly priced. My presence had not been purchased. My absence from the toast was not a punishment to me. It was silence given to people who needed to hear their own voices without mine rescuing THM from the echo. Somewhere across the city, a key lay on linen catching the last of the party lights. It would wake tomorrow in a house where it would not fit any lock. That is the Nadur. Key of symbols. They don't require a keyhole to be true. The next morning brought predictable weather, blue sky, a sun that refuses to edit itself, and predictable fallout. A cousin DM'd me heart and a proud of you, even if I can't say it in the family chat yet. Aunt Jennifer left another message that tried to rebrand consequences as regrets. My mother's text arrived dressed in truce clothing. We should heal. Families forgive. Forgiveness is a precise instrument. It cannot be wielded like a mop. One typed and deleted a dozen replies, then left her unread. Not to punish, to refuse to barter when someone tells you peace costs you your self-respect. The only counter offer is no deal. And Karen, she blocked me before breakfast. It felt, strangely, like a courtesy. A door shut gently is still a shut door, and I'd rather hear the click than pretend the hallway goes on forever. Later, as I wiped down my kitchen counter, a small domestic grace that never asked for applause, I thought of Dad's word again. Clean. Clean is not cold. Clean means the edges are true and the surfaces tell no lies. If the cocktail hour had been a morality play, mine had been the character who enters with a single line that the audience doesn't clap for immediately because they're busy adjusting to the new angle of the floor. The applause, if it comes, comes later, privately, in the kitchens of their own lives, where they look at the bill and finally say out loud, "No." The morning after the wedding slid into my apartment like a guest who knew where the cups were, sun on the counter, coffee hissing its small. Faithful him, I checked my phone only after I'd let the first wallet steady the world. There it was, a constellation of reactions that look D from a distance, like weather, a cousin's DM. Brave in private, I'm proud of you, even if I can't say it in the family chat. A college friend's text. That key, chef's kiss, and then the longer messages that call themselves bridges but feel like toll booths. Aunt Jennifer, soft as always, asking whether I was certain I wanted to let a single day define the sisterhood. My reply, which I typed and deleted 3 times before I trusted. It said what needed saying. One day didn't define anything. It revealed a definition that had already been written. By noon, the calls G of a way to silence, and silence, when it arrives after noise, can sound like oxygen. I did my laundry. I answered a client email about a set of stairs that didn't want to admit they were too steep. I revised a detail on a railing that wanted to be dangerous and still pass inspection. You learn a lot about people from stairs and rails. You learn if they understand that safety is the opposite of spectacle. I was pinning a drawing when my phone buzzed with Dad's name. Coffee? He said, no prelude. The way good engineers ask a question they've already tested. He was in town for another day, staying at a chain hotel that treats you like a person if you look like you want nothing from it. We met at a cafe that still believes in ceramic cups. He looked tired in the way men do when their job is to keep flying while the air around their family is misbehaving. He hugged me with his chin against my hair, a move he used to pull when I was 12 and needed a sentence without grammar. I'm sorry you had to carry it, he said when we sat. And he meant more than the gift box. I didn't carry it alone, I said. I outsourced to a symbol. He smiled. T. Hen sobered. I should have said more years ago. I kept telling myself that keeping the peace was the best I could do. There's a particular mercy that lives inside a late admission. It doesn't erase the years. B. And it lets the present feel possible. Peace, I said, isn't the same as quiet. He nodded like a man who had finally measured something properly. Your mother thinks reconciliation is an event, he said, but it's a project. It needs design. It needs maintenance. We didn't solve anything in that cafe. We didn't draft a future. We named the materials, respect, limits, time. He told me Susan had woken up convinced she could rewrite the cocktail hour if she just told the story in a tone that made sense to her. He told me Karen was alternating between rage and performance, which is to say, rage. He told me that when the room had gone quiet, he had felt something like relief, which made him feel disloyal and free in the same breath. I told him I was tired of making my limits sound like apologies. He tapped his cup against mine, like a checkpoint. To clean lines, he said. To beams that show. After he left for the airport, I did a thing I would have mocked 5 years ago. I went to therapy, not to talk about keys or bills, but to talk about scripts, Dr. Malik's office was built like a kind rebuke to chaos-neutral light, shelves that didn't auto, and themselves to chairs that had learned to hold a human without swallowing them. She asked questions like an architect. Where does it hurt? Where does it hold? I told her about my family's economy. How I was the beam that didn't creak and therefore became invisible. How invisibility was rewarded with more load. Boundaries disrupt roles, she said. Systems react as if someone has cut. The power, the alarms you're hearing, anger, guilt. Accusations are the system testing whether it can return to equilibrium. What if I don't want the old equilibrium? I asked. Then you keep your boundary through the alarms, she said. You let the system find a new balance or discover that you will not be the one to rewire the building in the dark. I left with each homework I could respect. Keep the limit without the lecture. Answer only what was asked. Decline invitations to purchase peace. She said something else that lodged itself the way a good detail does. Bound. Aries are contagious. People see one stand and recognize the shape. Some resent it. Some borrow it. Either way, the architecture changes, and it did. The fallout arranged itself into categories. In 1. The loyal opposition, relatives who wanted Emmy to undo the lesson because it made the family pictures blur. In another, the quiet supporters, a cousin who sent a photo of her own engraved. Kishi had one made years ago in her head, she said, but seeing mine made her want metal. In a smaller, more surprising category, a message from Michael's sister, for what it's worth. I told her not to ask you for that. Worth, I thought, is a good word to rehabilitate. Susan texted me a sentence that was half olive branch and half in voice. We should talk. Families forgive. I let it sit. Forgiveness is a wonderful door. It is also sometimes a revolving one that spits you back into the lobby of the same demands. I wrote a reply that Dr. Malik would approve of and then didn't send it because I wasn't being graded. I'm willing to talk when apologies are for coercion, not for my refusal to be coerced. Days pass. I notice the strangest effects. My boss, who has a habit of dropping last-minute "can you just" tasks on my desk Friday at 4, stopped doing it after I declined twice with a sentence so clean it left no handholds. I don't skip added scope without a prior conversation about timeline. And Fee, a friend who always forgot her wallet, stopped forgetting, as if Mikey had unlocked her memory. This is what Dr. Malik ain't. The building shifts when a beam announces itself as structural and not sacrificial. One evening, David called again. Not Dad David, the man who had been my father and was also a person learning how to be one without outsourcing it to politeness. Your mother wants to host a dinner, he said carefully, as if the word host might bite. To talk. Will there be numbers? I asked. He laughed. Only the number of chairs. I'll come, I said, because refusing to be coerced is not the same as refusing to converse. But I won't find a script while we edit it. And Erstood, he said. The word felt like architecture to a span between two posts that could hold something real. That night, I took the key out of my drawer and turned it in my fingers. Its weight was modest, its shin polite. It didn't open anything in my apartment. It didn't need to. It existed to remind me that love without respect is just a decorative arch, lovely until weather arrives. I set it on my desk next to my scale ruler, a quiet pairing of tools that measure what we pretend is immeasurable. Corinne's block remain. Absence has a shape when you've stared at it long enough. She posted honey. Oh, in photos anyway, white steps, blue water. Angle so tight you could smell the rental agreement. I didn't look long. Not out of business, out of conservation. Attention is also occurring. Sigh, I am learning to budget mine on a walk through my neighborhood. I noticed a house mid-renovation. The front peeled back to its bones, studs lined up like sentences waiting for verbs. A crew was in, stalling a new lintel over a widened window. It struck me how ordinary the upgrade looked until you understood what it would carry. A different view, a different light. a different way the room would feel to the body that entered it. Boundaries are like that lintel. People see the cutout and think you've taken something away. Then the light arrives, and the room admits it as starving. I wish I could tell you that by part 6 the family had learned its lesson, that apologies fell like confetti, that the word proper retired from our group text. What I can tell you is better and less cinematic. I slept, real sleep, the kind that doesn't bargain. I woke with my savings intact and my spine less interested in performing for people who confuse generosity with a success. When a younger coworker mentioned a relative, asking her to co-sign a loan because you're good with money, I saw her face do the math. I told her what Dr. Malik had tall. Demi, a boundary is an invitation to a different relationship. Accept it or decline it. Just don't negotiate it away. In the quiet that followed, I started a list in a notebook titled Struck. Tours that stand, on it I wrote, clean nose, honest yeses, invitations without invoices, keys that are symbols, not passcodes. And this circled twice. Respect is not a honeymoon amenity, it's the founder. Tran, the dinner my father David, the man who is learning to be a father in present tense proposed finally happened 1 week later. A table for 4, neutral territory, napkins folded into quai, tea triangles, a candle that tried to hard. The server poured water, left us with a basket of bread like an offering to civility. Corinne entered in white, the afterglow kind, not bridal, and sat across from me as if the table were a border, and the cutlery tiny guards. Susan adjusted the candle as if flame could be disciplined into the shape of her idea of peace. We did not order wine. I think we all knew that the last thing our words needed was more fuel. My father opened his hands on the table in a gesture that looked like both surrender and blueprint. We're here too. Talk, he said, and the verb sounded almost radical in a family that prefers announcements. I want to go first, Corinne said, chin lifted to the invisible audience. You humiliated me at my own wedding. There are sentences that are doors to amaze you. Step inside and find yourself running in circles. I stayed where I was. I gave exactly what I offered. I said, $500 and a boundary. Boundaries are just walls people build too. Justify being selfish, she snapped. Sometimes, I said, and sometimes boundaries are the only way to keep love from becoming. Gia Bill, Susan flinch, the way a person flinches when a word rearranges furniture in a room they thought they owned. It wasn't a bill, she said. It was an opportunity. Families come together for milestones. They support each other. Support, my father said gently, is not the same as underwriting. We have confused the two. Corinne rolled her eyes toward the ceiling, as if the architecture itself might co-sign her anger. You could afford it, she said. That's the part that burns. You could, and you chose not to. Afford has always been a magic word in our mother's house, an incantation that alchemizes what is wanted into what is owed. I held my fork the way you hold a tool you are not afraid to put down. I could afford to jump into a pool in my best dress, I said, but that doesn't make it graceful. Affording and agreeing are different verbs. My father breathed out, his shoulders performing the math of unlearning. We need to talk about how we ask for things, he said, looking at Susan as if the sentence were an invitation he hoped she would accept. Fine, Susan said, and the word had edges. Maybe I pushed too hard, but optics matter. I didn't want people asking why my own daughter wasn't at the reception. Optics didn't get you through the silence at cocktail hour, I said, not unkindly. Once he did, it was ugly at first, but it held. We ate a few bites. The choreography of forks buying us tiny pauses. Corinne's anger slid into something older and more honest. You make me feel small, she said, NTH. The accusation was a confession. You always have, with your spreadsheets, and your perfect plans and your stability. It's like my way of living has to justify itself to pass your inspection. For a moment, I saw us as children again, Corinne walking into rooms like applause, me composing small worlds out of Lego bricks and line paper. Your way doesn't owe me an explanation, I said. It only owes me the respect of not being funded by me without my consent. Her eyes shone, and I could not tell if the wet was rage cooling or love remembering its function. Fine, she said softly. Then say it plainly. What do you want from me? I want you to stop pricing my presence, I said. Stop treating love like a ledger. Ask if you need something. Hear no when it's the answer, and stop calling no jealousy just because it's inconvenient. The candle guttered, recovered. My father's mouth twitched like a man who recognizes a beam finally revealed. Susan stared into the flame, as if there were instructions inside it. I don't know how to fix this, she said, and the humility sounded new enough to be worth noticing. You don't fix it, I said. Why? We build differently, one conversation at a time. No ultimatums, no invoices dressed as invitations. We left without dessert. Outside, the air had that clean evening honesty cities make when they stop pretending they are only glass. We stood in an awkward square for points that had learned their distances. Corinne touched my arm, briefly, a passive contact so light it could have been imagined. Your key, she said, and the words were not spit but shaped. I put it in a drawer. It makes me mad when I see it, and it hells. Symbols do both, I said, and let the night carry us in for directly. Ons without a script to force us back. Back home, I placed my own key beside the small list I'd started of structures that stand. I added a line, dinner with no wine, sentences with no invoices. I slept like a person who had paid her bill and tipped the truth. This is the part where a certain kind of story promises reconciliation. A photo of sisters laughing on a patio, a mother's text with a heart that actually me. Anne's heart, I can't give you that. Not yet. What I can give you is better than a montage. The architecture of a life where money is not a leash, presence is not a fee, and love is not confused with performance. I keep my savings intact. Not because I love money, but because I love what it allows. Choices that are mine. Generosity that is real. Yes, that arrives why. Thought resentment stapled to the back of it. Somewhere in Corinne's house, the gold-plated key engraved 500 still doesn't open anything. It hangs in the dark like a tiny moon that refuses to orbit. A lie. When she's ready, it will illuminate a different path. When she's not, it will keep quietly telling the truth I sent it to tell. My goodwill has a capacity. My love does not provide it, yo. You stop billing it if you stayed with me to the end. Thank you for your time, your attention, your willingness to sit in a silence most stories drown with noise. I hope your own rooms are full of structures that stand, clean no's, honest yeses, invitations without invoices, and the kind of boundaries that make love safer, not smaller. I wish you good health, and I wish your family the kind of happiness that doesn't require anyone to pay a ransom for a chair at the table. If this story resonated, if you have your own key, literal or imagined, share it in the comments. Your words might be the beam someone else needs to see. And if you want more stories where self-respect wins without shouting, and where love learns to speak in a language truer than guilt, consider subscribing. It helps these lessons travel. It helps other people step into rooms where the floor no longer tilts. I'll see you in the next story. Bring your boundaries. Bring your heart. They belong in the same house.